like the pitch, basically what we'll do is send you a video. We'll check that it's dictating what we're saying, so that looks like it's recording. And what we're doing today, the purpose of this, Jack, is the first formative feedback. So it's sort of really the second formative, in that the pitch was first chance to get feedback, right? You self-assessed before you came here, and we're looking really at this grading criteria because the first element, the focus is on context and research. So we know that you have said what your project's going to be about. We double things like make sure that everything's kind of stuff to make sure things are where they're supposed to be on the website. And then from there, we'll just really look at context and research. And we've got the benefit of Sam in here, where we might even be able to chip in with some other things to look at potentially. So you're getting like double the value for your money.
Yeah.
If we have a look, then we've got your page open. You've self-assessed, first of all, in a past context. Merit research, you're more confident in research. You've got primary research. Is that your work? Is that a work in progress? Yeah. So we'll get rid of that thing. You've got books and magazines you have got, which is cool. And you've got a decent, a good amount of examples on your bibliography, which is really good. More specific research on caves. All right, cool. Castles and caves. Okay, so you fantasy horror, is it? Because neither of us saw your pitch. It was Owen who saw your pitch, right? How did that go?
Well,
cool.
That's a good point. That helped me.
Excellent. That's what we like to hear. So just looking at your page, you've got your statement that says your work's your own. Get you to do a signed document later on. Your proposal form is here. The only thing I would say, the first things to do, first important, is even though you might not be using this as a project management tool, using Trello or something else, or
Yeah.
Okay. So using the Gantt fine, if you can fill this in comprehensively than it is now and update it, basically, just because it just shows that you're considering the time mapping out. If you are stuck with it, shout me and I can suggest some things that would have happened. And obviously, we're up to week 6. We've got a fair amount that you really know happened, things that you've done. For example, week 1, SWOT analysis, project proposal writing, etc. Yeah. So time-wise, as you know, we're at week 6, which gives us pretty much halfway through the project in terms of the where we stand. So obviously Easter is 2 weeks out of that schedule. So do you have plans to do stuff? Are you able to do work? Yeah. What are you thinking of doing that time?
I want to start making stuff.
Okay. So then you have to do that at home.
I want to just thing I have on my website.
Okay. Skimming. So which first I'm doing, checking that things are where they should be. Your picture in there, you've got your reflection on it. I would say, like, if you're looking at reflecting, that not actually looking at the reflection criteria today, we're just focusing on context and research. Evaluation reflection is like a criteria itself. This is where you could pick up more or potentially improve a little bit. The summary is concise here. So we've got, you said another point that was the scale of the project that would be realistically be possible to make during this time frame. So you've said it's doable. Furthermore, you need to use the idea of lost technology, civilizations, and games, as well as diversity, what games, themes, and basing my idea of environments off of further improvement. For example, in that, were there examples of titles discussed? So it would be something to expand on. So if Owen said, maybe look at Breath of the Wild and Zelda as an example of an RPG that, although it doesn't cover the same criteria as mine, does talk about the idea of lost technology and civilization. There's these ancient machines, and then so in that expansive answer, then if we see the connection between that research where you've looked at Breath of the Wild and Zelda and those examples, then the dots are being drawn together, and then all those lines are kind of connected, and that's a really key thing that you want to make sure that if you give a bit more of an expansive answer here, there's more potential that we can see your reflection like resulting in something, basically. Yeah. So it's not to say that you don't need to feel like you need to write reams and reams. And what you have said there is good. You've not actually said my pitch went well. I said everything I needed to do, blah, and then you just stated what happened. You have indicated some of the feedback sense, but I think what we need to get it to that extra level is that idea of you saying, well, I agree with this, and this from the back of this, I'm going to go and look at this and action those points, So that's the key thing that would help essentially there. And you have, I'm sure you will have. We've got what looks like a lot of sources here, and you're referencing them. Do they connect to like where the things are in here? What's your method? Are you just putting down sources?
As I like get what I need, I put them in the links into like a Word document.
Okay.
So I have them all there, then I have them all when I get there.
It might be a nice idea to kind of like in the Harvard method you put little numerical indicators as to where that bit of research links to or leads to in here, so the connection again can be made rather than us kind of interpret it. So if you've had like one in brackets, let's say this, and then that links to a key image that you've then created over here in geography, right. I'll just other things. I think that's pretty much it in terms of checking things. So those are the things. Expand on the so far anyway. Expand on the reflection. Add a bit more to the bibliography. And in terms of the homepage, it's just really to make sure the time frame management element of the proposal form is done. Okay. Yeah. So context and research. We start off with a mind map that's just getting your first thoughts about Forgotten Realms. We've then got a mood board that links to dystopian. So were these just exploratory of ideas mood boards at the time? Yeah. We got like what looks like a placeholder. This is where your pitch.
It should be there.
Is it an embedded PDF or something? Yeah, it might be. Might just be an embedded PDF issue. If it continues, oh yeah, here we go.
Yeah, that's just
okay, cool. I think again, a lot of work went into this. This represents, quite a significant chunk of early pre-production planning. It would be a nice idea, in putting this together. It focused me to think about audience. It started me thinking about like what were the key formats and boiling down my idea into a concise summary was really important. So a bit of a reflection basically on this, Jack. Not in terms of how the pitch delivery went, because you can that later, but in terms of the key things that you were asked to look at and what that meant in terms of the focus of the project. Okay. Yeah. So add that as like another sort of footnote of a thing to do to action. These my final concept dystopian feel was I wanted to make a ruin. So I'm only going to be able to skim read this today, and we're kind of like looking at grading criteria as well, considering that. So we'll kind of refer back to this and where we're at with that. So if you only write in kind of short paragraph sentences like this, there's very little scope for us to get into. And it might be that there's further bits later on where you've got more examples of more extensive writing. Yeah. But the ability for us, there might be thorough and sustained research or good understanding, but it's going to be far harder for us to glean that from what you write if you don't add more depth to your explanations, essentially. Okay. Yeah. So the thing like making sound judgments and articulating ambitions, we're really not going to be able to get that from short answers, from short descriptors. We're going to only be able to get really descriptions of like, I did this, or this is important. We're not going to be able to get the deeper wealth of information. So I wanted to make a ruined. Let's take this as an example. Final concept. For my final concept, I decided to go for a more dystopian feel, as I wanted to make a ruined, rundown area with fantasy elements. So I decided to create another mood board to convey the sense of design that I wanted to go. I'm pretty set on the idea. I'm excited to see what it turns into. So from this, is there like key things that you've taken that you're like, oh, that's really important from this mood board?
Yeah, some of the images with like the bluey green sort of like sky. I wanted to like have the idea of like a unnatural color, like around the area.
An unnatural colour or a natural?
Unnatural.
Yeah. Okay.
At the moment, I'm thinking of sort of like dark purple.
Okay.
Just because I think it would like more make it feel like ruined, ran down.
Okay.
Then that goes into the idea of how I wanted to make it like there'd be like a big sort of event,
Right.
which caused it.
And that for me, like makes it feel more fantasy as opposed to the reality of some of these images, which are not quite so like or not so abstract, right? So what you've just given me quite a lot of information that would be really nice to take, and then we can see potentially. I think you've shown that in your later development. You've been saying to me about the purple skies and the colour schemes. So if in that explanation there, you could say one of the key themes that came from this in this putting together this mood board was the idea of this purple hue sky dome. Something I look into trying to achieve a custom sky is something that I want. I really like the purple, the kind of that makes it more fantasy, right?
It's exactly like the phrasing just you've done it.
Yeah.
So that difference between a pass and a merit. You've just said, if we just look at this, right? If this wasn't your own work, I want a more dystopian feel. Made a mood board. I'm excited to see how it turns out.
Yeah.
So what did come from?
Yeah.
What did you learn? What did you like about it?
Yeah, exactly.
How are you going to use that if you come back to the market scheme?
Yeah.
So if you look at that merit there, making judgments and articulating ambitions, how are you going to use it?
Yeah.
What do you actually get from doing other than helping you crystallize your own thoughts? And if that's all it is, at least say that.
Yeah.
But what you just said to me actually does lead into sound judgment. So that addition of that bit of detail of like the purple sky from this mood board is really inspirational. I'll even take that image out and put it separately here because that's something that that's one that I really tapped into. From this, I know that I'm going to need to look at how to create a custom sky dome in Unreal. I'm not sure how to do that at the moment, so that's something I'm going to look into. I really want that kind of foreboding cloud-like feel, but also the fantasy feel. All of that, what you just said to me, but expanded a little bit more. Bam, we're into sound judgments, clear purpose. We're up and running, and that is just the little bit of extra layering that needs to happen.
Yeah. Say pitch.
Yeah.
And then like this.
I know you've got.
Yeah.
Here's a chance.
Yeah.
Exactly. And a lot of work's gone into this. It's not like you just sat there and it's just magically happened. You followed a guide. Yeah, we provided a guide. You followed that religiously, made sure that everything's ticked off. In doing that, you've considered audience. You've started to think about time management. You've confronted some of the things that have been failings in previous projects where you've identified, look, this is time management's been a real thing. I've got a much better focus of project management now. I work well with my peers and I use them to support me in terms of steering what I have and haven't got in my life. These things are gold dust. That's the bit that will get us from potentially from a pass up to a merit. And it's just that little bit. I know you're someone who doesn't like blogging and it doesn't necessarily come that naturally to you. And so you kind of I'll do something else other than that. But if you were to just go into that, lean into that a little bit more, that would really boost your chances.
What have I learned from this? What am I going to do? That's some more bullet points. It doesn't have to be enjoy or don't engage with that stuff.
Yeah.
Keep it simple. Keep it just a fact. At least give us that.
You're more likely to get the merits and distinctions if it is more expansive. If that's something you think actually I could just put a voice note, like if you do voice notes or whatever, and do that kind of thing, and put a little MP3, SoundCloud or embed an MP3, which you can do fairly easily in Wix, and put that there as like a voice element, then you can do that. But whatever, it's not really like Sam said. It's not like I want walls of text. You work with Madison; she writes a lot, right? So you're like, oh my god, that's a lot of writing, and you're like, oh, you sweat, you've written loads, but actually that's the bit that will convert it and take it up to the next level. That's really kind of like what's the key element here. So we've then said further inspiration. So what's going on here? What we're talking about here?
That's one of the inspirations. I kind of just summarised the story there. And then at the bottom, I said what I was going to do with it.
What has this come from, Jack? What was it? Okay, ruination of Amazon. Okay. So we've got a lot of. Is this your?
Plot summary.
Yeah. Is this you?
Is this your plot summary or is this from the
Not generally.
No. So this big
Um,
wall of text like that. You know what I was saying before is like if you can, if I could just find this information out, and I found that out myself, like what I don't really gain anything from that. Other than you've got a little bit here with this research in mind, I plan to take inspiration from the copy and pasting ideas from this event, as I believe for the idea of Forgotten Realms, the inspiration finds for you mean fits perfectly and could point me in the right direction for this project. So we've got again a really descriptor, right? We have got an element here that describes like a little bit of like what this is for, but not really like we've got a wall of text which is like, oh, Jack's written a load here, but actually
Did you also link the video?
Yeah. I was thinking about summarizing it, but then I got told otherwise by Madison, so I don't know.
Well, yeah, and essentially it's not really that important that I know that. What all I need to know from this is like that, you know, this is a really key bit of information or the key plot line. I really like the lore behind this, and from this I want to take something a similar theme and apply that to my work, right? So in driving my work forward, I think it's going to be important to underpin it with a narrative that's similar to this. I want to take this and this, and you know, then I've got much more of a reason to have this page. Otherwise, you know, this doesn't really serve that much of a purpose. It just kind of is there. It feels like it ticks a box, you know.
Yeah, let's look at the summary here.
Yeah.
Highlighted here. Yeah. I believe the idea, this inspiration fits perfectly. Which bits of it fits perfectly? Because you've also just included like pages of a novel text on here. So which parts of this story? Just tell me now. Which parts of the story do you think are really good?
I like basically what happens is there's this place called the Blessed Isles.
Right.
After like basically just something happens, it gets basically turned into just a wasteland and then just forgotten about.
Like adventurers go in there to retrieve lost.
Yeah.
You also just summarize the entire wall of text.
Yeah.
And you've told me what about it is useful for you. Like an after a cataclysm of some kind, people just venturing.
Yeah.
That
So, yeah.
gives it purposely gives it.
So that's really important. I think again, proofreading, just a little thing, but you know, making sure the right word fits just shows that you're rereading it and taking care in it. And that, again, to help my research, I watched another video, some further research which helped me about the Chernobyl disaster. Another.
Okay, we've left straight from fantasy world and castles.
I wanted like a fantasy idea of like a big event and then a real life version of like a big event.
Okay.
Just presented
yeah.
me suddenly with Chernobyl.
It's just because it was in the pitch, so I kind of just assumed.
That's good.
Yeah.
Sorry. Again,
So
we haven't seen your pitch, so sorry.
Yeah.
but yeah, no. So that would be really good. I think, like
It's
saying,
easy, you can just say,
yeah,
as in my pitch, I wanted to combine the idea of fantasy and real world. So that's it. That's all you need is an intro, and I'm like, cool. I know exactly why this is here. So
perfect. Again, we've got a summary of Chernobyl. Plan to use this research to make a cataclysmic event that has happened in my environment and seems as realistic as possible, as also having added fantasy elements. I think again, what we want to hear here
why
is
are you giving us the chemical breakdown of the actors?
I thought it was cool.
It may be very interesting, but
I
you
thought
know,
like a kind
like
of
again,
movie could help.
yeah, that'd be good. So like maybe then, you know, that's the summary bit that we need. It might be like what I've taken from this and what I actually think is probably more important is, so you're talking about the science of it as well. But so the science, I think, as well as that, a bit, I think this is like skimmed over. So we could, you know, you could glean far more from this, like the way that the world has changed in and around the reactor since the fact that we've got certain species of animals that are doing really well. We've got like these wolves and things that live in that because they're untouched. You know, we've got maybe the radiation changed the color, so it would feel like what to have a kind of sky dome that's purple and contrast with trees that are like green and things like that.
nice like post-apocalyptic sort of event type thing. If you're looking at something even in your world, but it manages to include some of the stats as well. So what's left in the heart of the reactor? The name? The elements.
Yeah.
Massive molten core. So you could take some of that, like some remnant of whatever caused in your universe, you could then take it inspired by that. Because you can't go and see it. Right.
I don't know.
For one, it's utterly radioactive.
Yeah.
Two, built a concrete container and slapped it over it because it's so dangerous. They had to just cover the
Have
container.
it, yeah.
And you could do some version. Maybe the people here after the event just put some kind of contraption over the source of whatever cause is inspired again, you know, all the elephants full and the huge concrete container, and then they had to leave because the damage was done, but they contained it. You could take these four elements out, would then give you directly.
And then all from that, it might be like but that's got an emissive quality. So we having glowing things in your fantasy world. The crossover from reality to that is linked together. We've got real tangible elements that you're saying. Okay, looking at the trees, looking at emissive texture. I'm going to apply emissive, exploring that when I start with Unreal. We've got, again, similar thing with Pompeii. We've got basically something you found on the internet about Pompeii. Nothing really tells what you're taking from that. Further down?
Yeah.
So this is a very short summary of 3 source bits of information.
Yeah.
With the extent of the research effort was similar to cataclysmic events in the fact that the fiction and plan to use these in further inspiration, as further inspiration, this project, I believe, will help tremendously. So again, you're not really telling anything, but what I would like to know from each of these events, or we've got 4 very different real world events that or fantasy things as well. Yeah. Okay. So 2 of each. You can sort of say, well, look, what's happening here, and what's that? What's this one here for? Oxidization.
Like how.
Okay. Could that inform color schemes, or is that yeah?
I just saw that's like a big changing sort of thing.
With a little some paragraphs, it would be exactly what you look for after each resource.
Yeah.
Whenever you put one of these in, give me a little summary of why is it here? What have you learned?
Yeah.
What do you intend?
So that's the crucial thing at the moment. I know you've sort of indicated that you feel like research is going well, and it is in so much as the sources are relevant. I think that we can say you've got relevant information, but I would even struggle to think that there's
told us why. So you can't necessarily just.
Yeah. So I think, fortunately, like you are doing well in terms of that, but the connection of that to a higher grade is going to rely on more information, basically, more of your thoughts on what's happening. Yeah. I feel like a lot of stuff that you're thinking about that's making its way onto the site, basically. So we can't possibly justify the fact that you've like these keywords, the interpretation. But we talked about synthesis last week. What does that mean? Can you summarize what synthesis means again? Synthesis of information. So like filtering, basically. You're taking the things out of the information that you find, and you might research and look at 20 things, and then it boils down to 2 or 3 bits of key information. Those are the things that I can't see happening, okay? So at the moment, that's where it's falling short, Jack. We need more summarization of each of those things. We need a reason why they exist. I don't really need to know as much depth as I have here, unless you're saying, well, look, the bacteria species died out, the abundance of oxygen is creating this chemical imbalance, or it's causing this thing to happen. That's why the atmosphere is turned and these colors exist, or the rocks in Pompeii are like eroded and weathered. And I need some reason why these things are here and what that's doing. And then hopefully I can see the connection between what you make and what then happens in your work from the research. Character names. Okay, so looking here, codes. So is this something you've written up, or is this again found stuff?
Oh no, it's like both in a way. You know what I mean?
Is it like paraphrasing or something you found and all?
Yeah.
Yeah.
you are allowed to use quotes from sort of,
Mhm.
but if you do, you have to let us know that you're
Yeah.
put it in quotation marks and say words.
Quotes are actually better than sort of paraphrasing in a way, because it's like, I found this, I really agree, this is the key bit of information, and from this, do you know what I mean? Rather than this is what the code is, somewhere else said the code
It
is
allows you to
mentioned.
demonstrate that synthesis.
Yeah.
I'll add more to that.
Okay.
And the codes of convention.
Yeah, it needs beefing up. We want to know about everything to do with, if you broke it down, did in your pitch in terms of the aesthetic codes, so the visuals. We need narrative codes. You talked about all these things in brief, or another area on the pursuit, but those things a bit more expansively. What this should be now is a more expansive version of what's on your PowerPoint, whereas that's probably been less than what was in your pitch, right? So I'm sure you've got ideas of things to cover there, but if not, like you said, caves. Coming into this, you said you wanted to look at caves and castles, right? So that would cover the visual codes quite a lot for fan. That would be a really good thing to look at, and you could even go to a real cave or a castle, right, and get some photographs for primary research. That'd be fantastic. Have you got any lined up to go to? You've got like Farley Hungerford. There's like an old castle not too far up from here. I mean, like caves obviously a bit more difficult. There's Wookey Hole over in Somerset and things like that, but it could just be that, again, that you just look at weathered rocks and look at things in the real world that kind of show the similar type of tone, let's say, to what you're doing there. If you a castle, you could go and look at even sort of thing over by course just out on the road there, that kind of thing. So it's these Gothic churches that we've got, water, whatever it is, water fountain. So yeah, looking at things like that. Issues and debates, is that because you're struggling with things that are to cover for issues and debates? Or?
Yeah.
And I think one of the things with fantasy, and you're to cover it potentially like something to do with horror. So we've got quite dark themes and dark undertones. You looked at Chernobyl, you've looked at Pompeii, like pretty horrific events in the history of the world. We've got lots to kind of consider there. That's something that we want to build in. I think the representation of dark themes and elements in your work is going to be important. So that would be one to expand upon, and just how you show people dying or people being injured in that scenario. Again, more around that thing, more around like the way that monsters or whatever, even if it's fantasy, it's just that idea, or how do I cover something that's gruesome? Essentially, again, if you're looking at PEGI ratings, what would contain in terms of categorization PEGI has?
That's in the next one.
Is it?
Yeah, tags fear and violence.
Fear and violence, cool. Any no gore in there you wouldn't have? Okay. So then we can, well, if we've got fear and violence, that would be represented similarly to X. You've got all of the C rated as a 7. So thinking about, so you're showing consideration of like making it really low rated to make it have a broader appeal, right? That's really nice. Again, if you were to say that actually, look, maybe I don't do things disturbing, the monsters or enemies or whatever it would be that are in the world, if they were to, wouldn't be as grotesque as something from the Souls-like series. It might be that you represent it closer to something else and then show an example of that. Would be good. Okay, so that's good. But yeah, that would be something to show consideration of. What's color theory? Talked about accessibility there briefly. So, colorblind setting. This one again, this is really good one, accessibility guidelines, and which, if you had this to your or in your work, just a little bit around these elements here. This is what the industry uses to sort of show awareness of what goes into it. You talked about visual impairments and consideration of that. For example, essential information is conveyed by a fixed color. So, you know, if your world is very purple, you might think, well, I'll contrast that and have text being white. But maybe in some cases you highlight certain keywords in another color or something like that, so that it's just more like easy to stand out. And again, that then you can say that's because I've looked at the visual, what I could consider basic visual impairments by the game's accessibility guidelines, and that means I'm doing this, you know. So that would really help. So just little things like that would really bump it up. And you're on the process of primary research and getting feedback from surveys now. I think equally, like looking, yes, it's fantasy and yes, it's like horror and things, or that's completely detached. But if you can go and look at some examples of textures or like the feeling of how like blocks and things are made up, you know, how stone weathers over time, or how like tree things like look in that context, that'd be really good. All right. Because the other week you were looking, or last week at the end, you were looking at modularity in building the kind of wall section, right? Modularity would be a really good one. So it's kind of looping back to what you did with Sam in the group project, but that I show in consideration, that would be good. Okay. So yeah, all in all, I think it's going well, Jack. It's just that more expansive writing is really important. That's going to help to take this up. I think everything that you're doing is definitely relevant, but what I'm not getting from it, which is the crucial bit, is the like why and what you've done it for. Yeah. And so everything just needs that little bit more explanation or linking back to what you're taking from it. Is that okay? And then plans for practical work. You're starting to make things. Have you got like, again, things like plans around floor plans or like map design and stuff like that? Have you thought about the scale of what you're doing and things? Yeah. Is that on there yet or not?
Yeah, that should be.
Cool. So I was seeing some stuff. So we've got your SWOT over here. Good. You've got your Gantt chart, which is great. Again, what we want here, if we haven't got it, is like an explanation about your time management. We've got my time management. Gantt charts, roughly. So again, this would be another area where you could just be like a little bit extra. So like in previous projects, sometimes, especially at the start of the course, I really struggled with time management. You know, that was a key feedback theme in term one. Since then, I've had these tactics to help with that, which includes working with my peers and like benchmarking and seeing what other people have done on their sites, using that to help spur me on, and actually just working more collaboratively with people to inform what I'm doing. That's why now my time management is much better. You know what I mean? Then we're pushing into the higher grading areas. Okay.
I still have more text in that.
Okay, yeah. So a little bit of early thoughts and processes from that sketch. And this was really nice. I saw this block out you said about, and then from that you've drawn this, like we said, a video walkthrough of that and thinking about scale, doing some research. So I think another areas of research to look at level design. We talked about this on Friday, I think, as well, but looking at how you have scale as a key marker, how you use color to draw your, you know, if you're thinking your map is going to have a purple sky dome and you get that going, maybe then there's hints of yellow or hints of like a complementary color, which would be like yellow or gold or something that would draw you to wherever your quest marker is, where you've got to go, you know. Map design, a bit of like, yeah, like I said, like walkthrough. This is nice. Again, if you talked about we talked about the importance of saying what the font was and where you picked that, and that looks really nice. It's kind of got that it looks a bit like sort of cybery, but it's also got the weathering thing, so it's got a magic kind of feel to it, hasn't it? That heavy metal, but yeah, cool. So next up, we need to really plow into starting to look at modularity, level design, game design theory, and just expand what you've got. Okay. At the moment, it's more down into the class / referral area at the moment, but it could easily be worked up with the depth of explanation being ramped up a little bit. So it's definitely not all the things are relevant. If we go back one last time to the criteria, appropriate judgments are being made, descriptions of aims and to clarify the purpose are there, but we're struggling to really up into those, and we might be lacking in clarity and aims in some cases, I think, or the lack of description. Okay, so that's the bit to bump effectively. Is that all right?
Yeah.
Anything else you want to discuss before we wrap this up?
No.
No? Do you feel like you're going to go away from here with a clear sense of direction of things to do and things to waste the project forward? Cool. Okay. Okay, so let's wrap this up.